Hello, this is The Shift, and this is where we talk about everything around sustainability. I'm Frida Liu. United Nations Global Compact, UNGC, is a strategic policy initiative for businesses that are committed to take actions to advance broader societal goals. UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, UNGCMYB, is the official local network of UNGC that supports Malaysian and Bruneian companies in enabling them to contribute towards the SDGs and achieve business excellence via its 10 principles, programs and tools, while providing access to partnerships with a range of stakeholders to share best practices and emerging solutions. Joining us today, we have Shanta Helena Dwakarsing, Director of Programs and SME Center of Excellence, UNGCMYB. Hello, Shanta. When we talk about the UNGC and what you do, right? In what ways can SMEs benefit from aligning their business strategies with ESG principles, and how can this impact their long-term sustainability and growth? I'm sure this is a conversation you have every day.
Yes, indeed we do, Frida, and thank you so much for the question and for having me here. So sustainability and ESG adoption for corporate companies, and listed companies, MNCs, the business case is very clear for them. Yeah. On the one hand, they have to comply with the regulations, and at the same time also there is an increasing investor demand for this. However, when we're talking to SMEs, the realities are very different, so it's a little bit more challenging to address as well. But nonetheless, ESG and sustainability is becoming important for SMEs too. And there's different segmentations of SMEs, of course. So for those that are exporting, they also have to comply with the regulations. So for them, it is a clear business case. Right. At the same time, there is sustainable demand for suppliers. So for SMEs, if they are supplying to listed companies, right, for them, this is also important as an area of competition, because while corporates are actually looking into their scope 3 or into their supply chain, right, the reason being because most of the ESG risks are actually occurring in the supply chain. Right. So for SMEs that are sustainable and they want to supply, for them is a clear-cut competitive advantage if you are there. Right. But for those SMEs, if they are domestically trade-focused or it's just a B2C, then for them, it may still be a bit different to, right, see the results and the direct benefits in their bottom line. For now, in the short term. However, having said that, sustainability does have really its advantages of adopting. First of all, it creates, and many research have actually shown this, that it increases employee engagement and in terms of productivity and also loyalty to the company. Right. It also helps to build a more resilient business, right, and future-proofing your business, especially when we don't know when carbon tax is going to be introduced, but when it does, yeah, at least these SMEs are also getting ready. Right. At the same time, it can also help for new innovation and identifying new market segments. So for this kind of reasons as well, for SMEs, it's important to adopt ESG and sustainability.
Right. And what are some of the key challenges that local SME face when trying to embed ESG principles into their business strategies, and I guess how can they possibly address these challenges?
Yeah, so some of the challenges, we've been doing some research into this actually. One report that was launched last year together with Alliance Bank, and also aside from that, UNGC, we do a lot of research and insights on what is actually making SMEs to adopt ESG and what are some of the challenges. So first of all, there's a lack of knowledge and understanding about what is ESG, what is sustainability, and how does it impact my business. Right. So there's still clear a knowledge gap that we have to address before we actually come to the implementation stage. Another barrier or a challenge is the perceived costs that are associated with ESG and sustainability. Now, I won't deny that sustainability doesn't have any cost, and it is just, a walk in the park, and you don't have to put any investments in there. If we're looking at the 3 different dimensions, so on the environmental pillar versus social and governance. So for the environment, there's more investments that are actually flowing into green technology, right, mainly because in the longer run, it will have its payoff because you're making your business more efficient, more productive. You'll be saving on your energy bill and so forth. So this has a cost benefit. However, investments into the social pillar, for example, that is not really so straightforward. So if we're taking the example of whether you want to pay your employees a fair wage or a living wage as compared to what's the minimum wage, then how are you going to see that reflected into the bottom line? Well, it's a cost for the business, right? But this is something that is important from a sustainability point of view, because you are enabling your employees actually to to live a decent life and by earning a decent wage.
Right.
So these are some of the cost and associated factors.
Right.
However, seeing as sustainability will be inherent to building competitive and resilient business, I also see that sustainability needs to be seen as an investment and not merely as a cost, because in a way it's kind of a business transformation process. So similarly to digitalization, we're also seeing like, okay, you need to invest in the digitalization and then your business will become more efficient.
Right.
So I think we can take the same pathway as well with sustainability, because it is a different way of, looking at your business. How can we make it more effective? How can we be more successful in the long term as well?
I think like you will get your ROI, your return on investment, but the timing may be different, right, in terms of your investments and all that. So I guess what role can larger corporations play in supporting SMEs in their ESG journey, and how does, I guess, UNGC facilitate collaboration between SMEs and larger organizations?
Yeah, good question, because we also believe that SMEs need to get a lot of more support in order for them to transition to sustainable business practice. So this kind of support can come from multiple stakeholders. On the one hand, of course, we have the government by providing more incentives in forms of tax incentives or in terms of grants and so forth. So that kind of support system is going to be required in order to help SMEs and to support SMEs transition. On the other hand, we have the corporates and the listed companies. So how we see it as well, the corporates are in the end the main beneficiaries of their suppliers, the SME suppliers, if they are sustainable, because it helps them to reduce their risk. So this is a conversation and part of the key philosophies that we have in some of the programs that we are running in UNGCMYB, which is sustainable supply chain programs. So we are working together with the corporate and the SMEs in their supply chain and seeing what is the kind of support that these corporates, in collaboration with us, can give to them. This can come in forms of capacity building. So I think capacity building and being very clear on the corporate strategy that there is for their suppliers is important, and to communicate it clearly. Because SMEs can be often confused, 𝗕𝗂𝗃 has the ESG framework right now that will actually help a lot. And but before that, you have TCFD and all of this kind of reporting requirements, which are actually not so relevant for the SMEs directly. It's for them more important, what is their corporate buyer, the main corporate buyer, actually looking at?
Right.
Because they don't have to disclose all their ESG data.
Right.
So in that way, the corporate will benefit from their sustainable SMEs. So the support and the direction that is coming from them is very important.
Right.
So on our part, in UNGCMYB, I think a key role that we are doing is also to help localize sustainability tools and resources, and not only localize them, but also make them very practical and very pragmatic. So for example, if we're talking about all of this international framework, one is for SMEs, there may be a language barrier. So that is another hurdle to overcome in the already complex environment of navigating ESG and sustainability. So for example, we recently launched our SME ESG Hub. And also that also includes other type of tools that can actually help SMEs in a very simplified way, in a more like easier way to actually get them started on embarking on their ESG and sustainability journey.
Because I'm just thinking, no, not another acronym, and things to comply. And I guess even working with the likes of Alliance Bank, they're also helping their customers in that journey as well. And it benefits them too, right, in that process. So what are some of the resources available at UNGCMYB?
Yeah, so one of the flagship resources is the SME ESG Hub. This is really a one-stop digital resource center, everything related to ESG for SMEs specifically, where resources are available in both English but also in Malay.
Right.
And who knows, maybe different translations will also come. Our key philosophy behind this was, as mentioned earlier, to simplify a lot of the tools. So for example, when corporates are talking about materiality assessment, for them it's clear what they have to do.
Yes.
Sometimes even not so clear yet,
Right.
you know? So imagine how that is for SMEs. So what we have done is designing or redesigning this kind of tools in simplified PDF format
Right.
that they can download. There's a template already filled in for them.
Right.
It is also accompanied by video materials, by video instructions.
Okay.
So they can just watch and see like, okay, how can this kind of tool actually help them? Right. Another one is the SME Sustainability Action Guide. This was produced together with Taylor's University as well. This one is available in the 3 languages, English, Malay, and also in Chinese. And it is very descriptive actions of sustainable actions that SMEs can take. This is available for download as well. And we also have an ESG assessment, which we call the ESG START Assessment. So this was also based on, you know, how do we get certain ESG data out while not overcomplicating things. At the same time, we have mapped this kind of ESG parameters with what are most required data points from a corporate perspective as well. So in that way, it kind of comes from that corporate supply chain perspective. So it is a simple assessment. It will take about maybe half an hour up to an hour, where it's yes, no questions. And the outcome of this is actually an ESG maturity report. So they can see what are, you know, in which maturity level are you across the 3 dimensions, and also giving an overall score. And not just stopping at that, but it also gives them recommended actions on what are the steps that they can take next to improve their score. And finally, it's a mapping with the SDGs.
Okay.
Now, the reason why we have done also that mapping with the SDGs is because there's also a confusion between, you know, ESG, sustainability, and then there's the SDGs. There's just too many acronyms, right? And but this actually wants to, with this, we want to demonstrate that positive ESG actions can have a positive impact towards the SDGs as well.
Right. And if you haven't been to the website, which I have, it's very simply done. And I thought it was really clear that if someone wants to get on the program to do the test, it's not a complicated process. It actually simplifies it. So I have to say, you know, kudos to you guys for that. Now, the other thing is the cost of implementing ESG, expensive. A myth or fact?
So I won't agree with either. I mean, it will definitely, as I mentioned just now, and it will definitely incur some cost, right? Particularly for the SMEs, and if you don't want to invest in upgrading the machinery, retrofitting the building, and so forth. Those are pretty substantial investments, right? So as SMEs are mainly short-term oriented, like the question of the return on investment is not really clearly answered, because sustainability is a long-term investment that is being done.
And it also depends on what industry, what aspect of SMEs are you services, are you manufacturing? So it's also different in that sense. And I think the best thing to do is do the materiality assessment, and that will give you a gauge of what you need to look at, right? I guess also with the Budget 2024 announcements, right? How can SMEs leverage on all the things that have come out from the announcements?
Yeah, so in the recent budget announcements related to ESG, there were a few announcements. One is the continuation of the Green Investment Tax Allowance and Green Investment Tax Exemption, also known as the 𝗤𝗓 and the 𝗤𝗂𝗟 mechanisms that SMEs can make use of. On another note, there was an ESG tax incentives for related expenditure to reporting. But this is more related for the corporate, so it's not something that will directly benefit the SMEs. But on the other hand, it has been said that the budget is quite an SME-centric budget because it entails grants for digitalization, for example, and as well for upskilling SMEs and also underserved communities. So education as well is a key enabler for sustainable development. So in that kind of ways, you know, it can help also to advance sustainability.
Okay, so have a look at the announcements and of course, you know, leverage on what's available. And I guess, how can UNGCMYB further support SMEs, and I guess, how do they engage with you? How can SMEs engage with you?
Yeah, so the UNGC is a member-based platform. So that means that as well, SMEs can actually join us in becoming a member, right? So in Malaysia and Brunei, about half of our member base is actually consisting of SMEs as well. So we have this internal community. Now, aside from members, also SMEs can make use of the resources that are available. And I forgot to mention, especially in light of its sustainability expensive, but all of these resources are free. So they're publicly accessible. Anybody can make use of them as they want. Then I would also advise, please follow our LinkedIn because we do have quite a number of events and workshops that are going on. And sometimes these are also for free.
Right.
We also offer capacity building programs. So this is more of a deep dive that SMEs can join in as well. For this, there will be a fee calculated, but it's HRD claimable as well. Right. So in this kind of ways, we are helping the SMEs. And please feel free to reach out to us. Sometimes people think like, oh, the moment when you see UN in front, you know, but we are quite a dynamic team. So we have one office in Petaling Jaya. We also have another office in Johor.
Right.
And we have actually programs throughout the whole country because it is really what we aspire to be is an inclusive platform. So we don't just want to be centered here on the Klang Valley and so forth. We also need to understand what are the, you know, contextualities on the ground in, you know, Terengganu, for example. I've been there and done engagements there too. And it's quite interesting to see, you know, what are the perspectives from local communities there. And I would like to note though that actually, well, we may think that, you know, the Klang Valley, KL-based, the SMEs are more advanced, but sometimes it appears that in other communities, also in Sarawak, I really want to mention Sarawak and Sarawakian SMEs are often also more advanced when they're looking into social development because in certain ways, SMEs have the set challenges. One is employee turnover that is always very high. So what as an SME business owner do you have to do to retain your employees? You need to implement certain social programs. So while these companies may already been doing this for many years, they never applied it from an ESG lens. So all of a sudden they say, oh, ESG is something new. I don't know what I'm doing. But when we are linking this, well, the current programs that you have and how you are actually helping the community through this kind of programs, you are doing sustainable business practices
already.
So that's an eye-opener, and it's also encouraging to see that many SMEs are already adopting certain elements of ESG and sustainability.
Right. So anyway, for more information, do go and check out their website. I've been speaking to Shanta Helena from UNGCMYB, and you've been watching The Shift.